Recently on one of my videos, someone posted a really great comment about the movie Let It Be. They said that while they didn't see the movie when it first came out, they knew a few other Beatles fans who did see it when it first came out, and he said that it had left them feeling kind of flat. Now, I didn't see it either when it first came out. I didn't see the movie until 1976. That was the first time I ever saw the movie Let It Be. And I gotta tell you, it left a very long-lasting impression on me, something that lingers to this very day. And that's what I wanted to talk about. But first, I want to give you a little bit of context about that time in 1976. I was a very ardent Beatles fan, and I was 16 years old. And it's not like, back then, it wasn't like it is now where, we're basically swimming in all kinds of information about the Beatles, so much so that we feel like we know them. Back then, all I had access to was maybe, a few books here and there, some magazines, of course, their albums, the movies. Sometimes you would see them on the news. I mean, that type of thing. So this was all scripted and curated material. This was stuff that they basically wanted us to know. So I really didn't have the best idea of who the Beatles really were. So if I'm going to go see a movie about them, I'm expecting to see like a romp, like A Hard Day's Night, John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Maybe that was naive, maybe that's stupid, but that was me. That was what I was expecting. The other thing about that time in the 70s, definitely we knew they'd been broken up. We knew all about that, okay? And I was very familiar with their solo work, and I already, John had already done his Lost Weekend situation, so I knew all that. I wasn't totally stupid, okay? So I figured, okay, they're grown up and they're different. I've read their story in the magazines, all that, okay? So I was aware of some of the angst between them. But still, I'm going to go see a movie made in 1970 before all that. So I'm going, okay, still, I'm just going to see these guys. They're getting along. It's all going to be super duper. And again, like we also thought there in the 70s, it's a breakup. I was well aware of that. But maybe they could get back together. That was a thing for sure back then. Now, it wasn't heavy and it wasn't all the time and people weren't really calling for it constantly, but it was just kind of in the background. Like something that could happen, maybe, and there was no deadline, it didn't have to happen by 1980. Maybe they could, maybe sometime in the 80s or the 90s it could happen, but we all know that changed, after 1980. Now, the other thing about being a Beatles fan in the 70s, it's not too cool. Okay, so when I was going to go and see the movie Let It Be, I was going to be going by myself. I was basically on that island all alone, but that was totally fine. Okay, because you know why? It was going to be a great day going to go see that movie because at that theater that day, it was a Beatles movie marathon, and I was going to see all 5 of them in a row. Hard Day's Night, Help, Magical Mystery Tour, Yellow Submarine, and then Let It Be. Now, I hadn't seen Magical Mystery Tour before, and I hadn't seen Let It Be. So I was all excited. I was all jazzed, writing in my diary, I'm going to go see this today. So I'm all excited. Now, and I had only seen Hard Day's Night and Help and Yellow Submarine. I'd seen those before, but only a couple times. So it wasn't like I knew them by heart or anything. And I hadn't seen them in a theater before. So it was all new. And that's the other thing I wish for Beatles fans everywhere, that one day, maybe we can see these movies in a theater sometime and not some kind of special, invited showing, something that we can all just pay a ticket and go see whenever we want. I think that would be fantastic. So anyway, here's 16-year-old Jackie in that theater all day long. I've been waiting. I'm just totally saturated in Beatles stuff. I'm all fangirling. I'm all alone, so I can fangirl to my heart's delight. And I'm looking forward to Let It Be. I hadn't seen before. So I'm just sitting back. I'm all innocent, and I'm expecting to see something. And then we all know what I see when it comes on the screen. The Twickenham soundstage, and it's all kind of empty. It's a little bit dark. It's a little bit gloomy. And they're in 1976. It wasn't all cleaned up. It's kind of a grainy film stock there and a little bit of fuzz around the edges. I mean, maybe the theater had a bad copy. I don't know. Maybe that made it a little bit darker. But this impression lingers with me to this day, is how kind of dark and gloomy it was. And they're just kind of John, Paul, George, and Ringo just kind of wandering around, sometimes talking, sometimes singing, but there was a lot of downtime there. At least that's my memory of it, where it was just it was very disjointed. And that and that sequence of there at Twickenham Studios lasted a long time. 20, 25 minutes, I think is how long that was. So And and so it seemed to me like this is not the John Paul, George, and Ringo I was expecting. So that hit me pretty hard, that they all seemed kind of gloomy and down. And so maybe they were, obviously they were all not in a good space. There's a lot of pressure on them. So I was feeling that. I didn't know all that because, again, I didn't have access to all the information. All I knew was what I was seeing there and feeling and sensing from these guys, that it was not, things weren't working. And I only remember, the Twickenham sequence. I don't remember a whole lot of them. Actually, I don't remember any of the rehearsal or anything that went on, in that basement studio. The only thing I remember is the two of us performance. That's the only thing that sticks with me to this day, because that was nice. That was really nice. And a little bit of the rooftop performance. Just a little bit. I can still remember the figures moving around, and the music I remember. That absolutely I remember. Because again, I was very familiar with the music. I love the Let It Be album. So I was expecting, a lot of fun, because on that Let It Be album, there's some chatter there, and it seems very upbeat and joyful. Maybe I was stupid for expecting that, but truly all I can remember is the Twickenham sequence, and the argument that didn't bother me. That was different. Okay, that was very different, but it didn't seem awful or tense or anything like that. Maybe because I grew up in a big family. I go, there's having words here, man. So it didn't seem like a big deal to me. What did seem like a big deal was the fact that they weren't like a unit. I was seeing like four individuals there who kind of sort of didn't get along and weren't really enthused about anything. Didn't seem like anything was going anywhere. And that has stuck with me this entire time. I mean, again, maybe that's naive. Maybe that's stupid. Maybe it's because I'd seen all of these, happy, upbeat, great movies. I'm not saying Let It Be isn't a great movie. But what I'm saying is very different. It's very different. It kind of sits in this little corner all by itself, compared to all these other movies. And so maybe that's why, I'm sitting there and I'm expecting, I'm expecting Let It Be to me, maybe just like these others. But when it comes on the screen, it just kind of punches me right in the face and knocks me out. And so to be honest with you, I go out of that theater kind of numb. And I mean, it again sounds kind of naive, sounds kind of stupid, but that's the truth. I was just kind of numb and shocked. And I was trying to remember, like I was trying to only focus on like the rooftop, and the move and this, and the music and all that. That's all I was trying to focus on. But no, the Twickenham stuff just stayed with me. That gloomy in the doldrums feeling lingered with me. It was like a hangover for several days afterward and for decades afterwards, because I never saw that movie again. I never volunteered to go see that movie again, pull it up online, watch it. Hell no. I did not want to go back to Gloomy Town with the Beatles, okay? Maybe I just wanted to, think of them as Hard Day's Night, John Paul, George, and Ringo, but no. Obviously, in the decades that have gone by, a lot of things happened. 1980 something happened. In 2001 something happened. Okay, so again, a lot of water under that bridge. But still, I didn't want to see Let It Be. You would think that I would kind of say, what's the big deal now? No, it left that kind of an impression on me, so sad that I just didn't want to go there again. Again, maybe stupid, but that was a real thing. So when, John Paul, George, and Ringo talk about how depressing it was and they shelved everything and they put it back there, I'm in good company, because I didn't want to see that movie ever again. And I didn't. And I didn't want to see Get Back when it came out. I go, okay, this looks kind of cool. But I didn't see it right away. I waited until the next month to see it. But I don't know. See, it left that kind of an impression on me. It did. Now, did everything kind of get into perspective a little bit afterwards? Have I shifted a little bit? Yeah, I shifted somewhat. Obviously, the full darkness of the Let It Be, there's a little light shining there. But the memory of that, the impact that it, that left with me, and the memory of me kind of in that theater, just kind of feeling like my 16-year-old, this girl who was just wanted to see a happy Beatles movie. Sitting there all alone with nobody to talk to, just kind of reality. It just was hitting me in the face, just shattering all your illusions. I know that, again, it sounds kind of stupid, but I walk out of there and I never see that again. That's ridiculous. So, but thankfully we have Get Back now and the restored Let It Be and all that stuff. So, and again, probably sounds kind of dumb, but you know that gloomy feeling that stuck with Beatles fans and John Paul, George, and Ringo for a long time. That was a real thing, man. It really was. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I really and truly appreciate it. And until next time, peace and love one another. Take care.
Beatles is Beatles are Beatle, 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 Beatle. In the end, it's like, oh, sod off with the Beatles, you know.